Oi, oi, it's your boy, Jack Snack. It's the Jack Snack podcast, and we're coming at you on Monday, the 19th of June. Picture the scene, if you will. It's Saturday morning. I'm working double time in the content mines. Things have been hard. The last seam of genuine content seemed to expire before UFC 288. We've been running on fumes for weeks. There's only so long people will pretend that Holly Holm versus Bueno Silva is okay. A cry goes up. The Canary's dead. Then we get the news. An absolutely fetid Yoel Romero main event is heading down the pipe at us. And there's no time to get out. We have to make content about Yoel Romero. Goddamn Yoel Romero and his terrible fights. Yeah, Bellator. What was going on? They took another 2-month break or whatever it was. They came back with, as I said on the podcast, Pitbull Frere trying to be a weight bully. It's like he's been up in weight, but now can he be a weight bully and go down in weight? And you're going, that's not a particularly interesting pitch, to be honest. He's going to win a third title by trying to beat up someone much smaller than him. But some people made that interesting in their minds. And then the main event was Nemkov, who's legitimately world-class light heavyweight, versus Yoel Romero, who's legitimately world-class at convincing world-class fighters not to attack him that much. But not doing very much at all on his own terms. I hate watching this man fight so much. I loved the 2 Robert Whittaker fights. Obviously when he knocked out Luke Rockhold, that was very impressive. But nowadays, Jesus Christ, they got Melvin Manhoef at the age of 43 or whatever to balloon up to light heavyweight for his title eliminator. Melvin Manhoef. And even that fight, it was Yoel Romero doing nothing for large portions, then eventually putting Melvin Manhoef, who can't wrestle, on his back and pounding him out. The cheek of Scott Coker to come out after this event and be like, I think we've got the best light heavyweight division in the world, when they've just given Yoel Romero a title shot off Melvin Manhoef. So I watched this fight. It was every bit as bad as I expected. It's Yoel Romero. If anything good happens, you'll hear about it before you watch the fight the next day. Or at least I will. It'll be blowing up in GIFs online. Otherwise, it's just suffering through him not doing much, while maybe... is it a taunt? Is it a taunt if you're not winning? It's just acting like a silly goose while getting beaten up. He's terrified of gassing, so he holds off until, the last round or very late in the third round. He explodes, and then he claims the moral victory. Like, wow, imagine if I'd done that sooner. And he didn't do it sooner, because he's scared of gassing. And respect to Vadim Nemkov, because at least he went forward and did something. Because, some of these fucking fights, I mean, Izzy's a very famous example, but, people are scared of Yoel Romero's raw athleticism and potential to just jump up and knee you in the head if you overcommit. Vadim Nemkov was at least throwing both hands from the very beginning, 3 or 4 punches at a time, landing most of them. Round 5, Yoel Romero starts coming forward and Vadim Nemkov starts giving ground. But Yoel Romero's eyes are swelled shut, and he's throwing punches, and it used to be, damn, he's throwing himself into these punches with, look how he moves. It's not like a boxer, it's cat-like, and so on. But he's just throwing punches and, careening off the fence when he misses. Now, at least. And then he finally got a takedown in the 5th, and he was going to ground and pound Nemkov. And Nemkov, rightly, knowing that there was a minute left, put himself in north-south and buried his head under Yoel Romero's balls and grabbed a body lock around him, which is not how you get out of the north-south or escape a pin, but it is locking you in position. So Yoel Romero starts trying to elbow and punch his belly, but he's in too close, so he tries to circle back to side control, and Vadim Nemkov just keeps tucking his head underneath Yoel Romero's balls. It was a very funny way for the supposed best light heavyweight in the world to end the fight. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you've got to prepare for with Yoel Romero. He's not going to do very much until late, and then he's going to try and either steal the fight or steal a moral victory in the aftermath. Now, respect to Yoel Romero, I do enjoy his freakish shows of athleticism. When he decided to jumping knee, foot sweep, and bundle Chris Weidman over after a round and a half of doing nothing, that was really impressive. I also added a Cuban sugar water button to my soundboard if we're talking about whenever a fighter disappears for a week without taking a random drug test. Hope I don't get flagged for using that. So after all that, it was actually a middleweight Apex main event in the UFC that saved me from despair. Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier was actually pretty decent. It was a pretty back and forth, well, not back and forth, mainly forth, but it was a pretty banger fight is how I'd describe it. Two lads taking lumps out of each other, one taking many more lumps out of the other, but man, Marvin Vettori is tough as hell. I was talking earlier in the week about how he hasn't it's hard to get invested in his fights because he hasn't finished anyone in over a decade. He's got one UFC finish, I believe, in something like 15 fights with them. And he's obviously a big, strong, tough guy. You can watch people like Jack Hermansson trade with him and then get scared. But he is one of the sport's worst finishers in a division full of finishes. But, middleweight's basically heavyweight. If you wait long enough, the other guy will get tired and fall over. But Marvin Vettori also, tough as nails. I think the thing is, whenever you see like an all-action fighter, people say he knocks out or he gets knocked out. I think with Marvin Vettori, the case is that he doesn't knock people out, but he doesn't get knocked out. And so you get amazing fights like this, or an amazing fight like this, come along, where he just absorbed like 1,000 blows to the head. And then made Arnie noises and continued forward. But this was one that started in a completely different way to... It continued, the 4 rounds were Jared Cannonier giving Marvin Vettori an ass kicking. But in the very early going, round 1, it looked like Marvin Vettori was going to take it out of Jared Cannonier. Cannonier came out southpaw. Vettori countered him with an overhand left across the top of his jab several times and really rocked his shit up. And Cannonier kept going back to it. It's really interesting because the southpaw stuff, he did used to do switch hitting quite a bit when he was a heavyweight, light heavyweight. But you really noticed it coming out more in the Gastelum fight. And that was a fight where he seemed committed to doing about equal hitting off both sides. And, it is something the commentators always say, but you do get used to doing defense on one side. Whereas if you're doing offense off both sides, you're trying to slot things in. So if I'm Orthodox and you're Orthodox, I know that my closed stance weapons work against you when I'm Orthodox, and my open stance weapons work against you when I'm go southpaw. And that's really nice when I'm switch hitting and you're not, which is the case most of the time, because then I can change stances and your brain has to play catch up. I'm still doing the same shit. If I'm in southpaw, I'm doing the southpaw shit. If I'm in Orthodox, I'm doing the Orthodox shit. And that's what you see guys like Sean O'Malley, Max Holloway, etc. doing. And Sean O'Malley's a really good example, actually, because as soon as someone starts switching with him, he has to take a minute to work out what he's supposed to be doing against their stance. Now, on the defensive end, it's a little bit trickier because defending yourself is not the same, southpaw to orthodox, and it does rely on the stance matchup too. If you spend all your time in the gym defending yourself from orthodox while attacking from both stances and sort of picking at people, and you get caught in your southpaw stance, you can be in trouble because the opponent's offensive opportunities are all different to what they would be when you were orthodox. It's not the case of doing the same shit and flipping it over, which I think is why switch hitters generally weren't very good for a very long time in MMA. Actually, one of the weird sports, or one of the weird combat sports to watch is something like high-level point fighting karate, which is terrible to watch, just generally. But if you watch something like the WKF on YouTube, guys will come out and they'll agree to mirror each other. So everyone at the highest levels can work off both stances, but they basically just react to whatever they step forward with their preferred foot, and if the opponent steps forward and it ends up in a closed stance, they'll switch. Everything in like high-level point karate tends to happen from the open stance matchup. Sorry, generally, it's not an actual rule. It's just like not even a gentleman's agreement, but everyone just understands that they want to be working on the open stance. Anyway, so Cannonier's fighting out of southpaw, and he keeps getting chinned with the left hand across the top of his right jab. Second round, he gets back to orthodox more, and really the difference was, like, you saw when he stood around, when he was just standing in front of Vettori and trying to put together volume, he'd throw a 1-2 or he'd just throw his right hand from orthodox, and Vettori would throw the left hand across the top of it. Exactly the same way he was doing with the jab when Cannonier was southpaw. So he's catching with the same thing. The difference was when Cannonier was mixing up levels. So he was using low kicks and things like that, front kicks to the body, the odd jab to the body and right straight to the body, or left straight if he switched, and the feints and the movement. There was a lot of feinting going on from Jared Cannonier, which I really did make a difference. Because if you feint at someone and they're waiting to throw the counter across the top, they either throw the counter at the air or they freeze. No one wants to throw punches at air. No one wants to throw big punches at air. Well, I mean, fuck it. Watch top fighters shadowboxing and look how different their form is. Most of them don't like throwing full punches at air. They're doing little like punches. Being like, yeah, I'd extend if there was an opponent in front of me. And a lot of coaches get very mad about that. They say, just throw full punches. It doesn't matter how quick you look in your shadowboxing. But yes, no one wants to throw big swings at air and miss. Firstly, because you get thrown out of position. Secondly, because it's quite tiring to miss big punches. And thirdly, because you look like an idiot. So you'll notice that Cannonier got to work more when Vettori was holding back on his counters. And then the more you land, the harder it is to pick a single shot to land or pick a single opening to land a counter. Volume was sensational in this one from Cannonier. Really impressive considering that he's known as a big hitter. And he just, kept throwing more and more and more. Picked up the odd takedown when he could, which is what you want to see someone doing. I would say my one complaint would be some of his work along the fence. In I think it was the second round when he really hurt Marvin, he stepped in and Marvin was covering up along the fence and he landed some really nice hooks to the body, some body shots, and he also grabbed Marvin's hands because they were on Marvin had the double forearms guard up real tight, and he grabbed Marvin's hands and folded over elbows, and that's the stuff you love seeing. That's how you attack someone when they're in survival mode. And I felt like a lot of the work in the third, fourth, and fifth, when he had Marvin maybe not as hurt as badly, but up against the fence and in trouble, he wasn't looking for the body shots. He wasn't looking for the folding elbows. He was just looking for more chances to land the 1-2. But yeah, impressive performance from Cannonier. Impressive performance from Vettori, even losing. I've been more impressed with him losing than I have in some of his victories. Just taking that level of punishment and continuing. Questionable whether his corner should have let him, because he's not like he's got zero history of finishing elite competitors. So the idea that he was going to come back from, a 3-4 round arse whooping. His corner man was very funny. He was like, oh my God, you got to stop this. He's throwing the right hand down the middle. He's hitting you like a motherfucker, blah, blah, blah. At the end, I think this was the end of the second, he's just like shouting at Marvin. And then the other coaches start talking and he goes, calm down, everyone. So, Cannonier into title contention again. Fuck it, just do the Dricus du Plessis fight. Everyone complains that he looks like shit every time he fights, but at least he's not already had one shot and had basically a Yoel Romero fight in the course of that title shot. So then I suppose the third most important fight of the weekend was Patricio Pitbull's trip down to bantamweight. Truly bizarre. The whole thing was like, can he get a third belt? And Sergio Pettis did seem like the perfect guy to pick off, because Sergio Pettis has never been that great. But Sergio Pettis is currently is now on a run where he's styled on two of Bellator's longest-running champions in different divisions, and also Ryzen's long-running champion. So, not too bad, Sergio Pettis. Went from getting jobbed out by Rob Font to that. And Juicy Formiga and Henry Cejudo. Also is technically a flyweight. So now a flyweight has the lineal Bellator lightweight title, because Michael Chandler lost to Pitbull, and then Pitbull went all the way down to bantamweight to lose to Sergio Pettis. Is Sergio Pettis the Bellator GOAT? Not for me to say, but yes. No, this was an interesting match, and we talked about it on the Boycast, previewing it, and I said, lots of TJ Dillashaw going down to flyweight to fight Henry Cejudo energy. Kind of like, why would you do that? If you've got yourself a healthy fighting weight where you're succeeding, why would you then try and handicap yourself by going down further? Also, worries about chin and power and things like that holding up when you go down a weight class. And then just the difference between fighting heavier guys as a smaller guy or a lighter guy, and going down and fighting smaller guys yourself. We talked about a few fighters in various sports, but a few fighters have done very well fighting up in weight, but making it their home. Not doing like the occasional fight up in weight, but actually being a very small, whatever that weight class is. So the example I'm always going to use is Frankie Edgar, who's an all-time great lightweight, went down to featherweight, got down to bantamweight by the end of his career, but granted, he'd sort of dropped off a little bit when he went down to featherweight, but he was still world-class there. But he never... I always felt like he performed better as a surprisingly fast pocket rocket up at lightweight than he did down at featherweight, where people were, more prepared for his speed. But if you saw him against like Yair Rodriguez, the weight cutting some of these motherfuckers are doing now is incredible. Or Yair Rodriguez versus BJ Penn. BJ Penn, it was like he could never get down to featherweight. He kills himself to make lightweight. And then you see him against Yair Rodriguez, who's double the size of him at featherweight. But yes, some people build styles that work better up in weight. Frankie Edgar was a dynamo who just worked at an amazing work rate, went up and down with level-changing combinations, hit his shots very well, and used a lot of lateral movement. So you come down and you expect guys to be a little bit faster and a little bit more, less easy to catch by surprise. Pitbull's thing was that he was very low output. He did big connections and he used to sort of float. Well, he has recently been sort of out in the middle of the cage, letting guys run onto him. I think a really interesting comparison is both Sergio and Pitbull's fights with Juan Archuleta, who is he just sort of runs around the edge of the cage and then sprints in on a line. Sergio Pettis hit him with the same right-hand counter about 50 times. Didn't really hurt him, but just kept doing it. Pitbull, it was much lower activity rate in that fight, and he clinched up a lot to avoid striking. But his connections were big, and he dropped Archuleta when he hit him. Very much a big moments fighter. He gets knockouts or he gets knockdowns and scores the round. And I think what was especially interesting was that he came out for this fight and he stood right in front of Pettis. He really closed down the distance. He wasn't floating around like he is normally. When you see him against gigantic guys, he's doing the sort of Lyoto Machida exaggerated distance thing. Against Pettis, he sort of walked right up to him and was on the end of his kickboxing range the entire time. And Pettis threw a jab and he threw a right hand and countered him. And then he did it again. And Pettis didn't seem wobbled by it. And I went, that's interesting. So now you're in a straight kickboxing match with a guy who's probably got a better rate of activity than you. And this is the thing. Pettis, my criticism of him, I was gassing him up back before he fought Henry Cejudo. And then you saw him against like Cejudo, Jussiel Formiga, Rob Font. Just like when things weren't going his way, he'd go, well, I'll get on it next round. He let Jussiel Formiga get on his back standing along the fence. I think it was the third round of a close fight. And he just stopped. He was like, yeah, well, fight's over now, sorry. Didn't get choked, but just stood there doing nothing. It's like, try something and get choked in the course of it. You lose half your money either way, whether you're losing the round or you're losing the fight by choke. So that always frustrated me. But striking-wise, he's always put up a decent work rate. And in this fight, that proved to be the difference, along with feinting, getting Pitbull reluctant to swing. And by the end of it, you saw Pettis, by round 3 or round 4, he was tripling and quadrupling up on the jab to throw a wide right to the body. And popping out jabs just short of Pitbull's face to get Pitbull flinching for the counter, and then stepping in and jabbing him again. He really just... It looked like a sparring session where one guy was a lot better. Because once the power was off the table, that's basically what it was. Now, Pitbull did try to wrestle, which was probably a good idea. I mean, I was talking about this on the Boycast, but he is so strong. He's, 5'6" or something like that. He's fighting featherweights, and even Michael Chandler back in the day, but he's fighting featherweights who dwarf him. And if he grabs a hold of them, he hits this inside trip from the clinch on the underhook side, the old Randy Couture off the fence style one. But yeah, he just heaves around much bigger dudes. So I was expecting that to play a factor. And in the first round, he ducked in for a nicely timed shot, and he just slung Sergio Pettis on his head. It looked like it cost him no effort at all to throw Pettis through the air. But Pettis, kept good position, pummeled his underhook, turned in, got back up. And then every time that Pitbull shot in on him along the fence, he'd get an underhook, he'd start doing good, technically precise cage work, and he'd break free. Now, there are people who are saying, this is when... Oh, sorry, I forgot to say, beautiful wheel kick landed from Pettis. He was doing the Edson Barbosa thing where you go backwards and then you stop and wheel kick. You're like, I'm giving ground. No. Call the ambulance, but not for me. But people are now talking this is Pitbull's drop-off or whatever. I think just, his qualities at higher weights, where we're all going, God, he's so tiny up there, and he's still doing so well. What if he went down to a more, for a more suited weight class? I think his qualities make him better at a higher weight. Having great power up there. And being able to float around the ring and hitting fast and being surprisingly strong despite being so compact. That's all, really effective against guys who aren't, who don't expect that from a tiny little man. When you're fighting someone your own size and it's just a straight kickboxing contest and that guy's, every bit as fast as you but not throwing one punch at a time, yeah, I mean, that's going to be trouble. Pitbull, I don't think Pitbull threw really any sort of combinations. He wasn't punching into low kicks or throwing high kicks to set up punches or anything like that. Pettis was throwing combinations all the time. Don't think I saw Pitbull fainting much. Pettis was fainting lots. It was like he's having a kickboxing match and he's trying to land one good counter. And the one good counter, when it landed, it wasn't doing that much. So yeah, sad for Pitbull, happy for Sergio Pettis, and now he gets to fight Patchy Mix, and that is a real size disparity when they got them in the ring together. Sergio was up on his tiptoes for the stare down. They both had a good laugh about that, but Patchy Mix is massive dude. Much bigger than Pitbull. So yeah, there was that. Anything else good? Nothing on the Bellator card that I really cared about. But on the UFC card, there was some really weird shit going off. There was no contest due to premature stoppage, which I believe Jerin Villel decided on the video monitor. And then he gets into ref Carlos Hernandez versus Dennis Bondar. I really enjoyed this. I thought they were both... It's one of those ones where it's low down the card. You're not really that familiar with either man's work. But you're going, damn, these guys both have good skills in lots of areas. And I'm really enjoying it. Hernandez tripped Bondar off the fence, slammed him onto the back of his head, and then hit him with 6 or 7 elbows. And Jerin Villel was like, And he was doing the Herb Dean shuffle where you're running from one side to the other behind the fighter. It stops it probably 6 elbows late. And then he goes, I've got to save some face here. Well, it wasn't a knockout because their heads collided when they hit the mat. Now, any slam knockout ever has been basically a headbutt. There's this whole thing back in the day when Randy Couture defended the heavyweight title against Gabriel Gonzaga. He picked him up, he smashed him down. Couture's head landed on Gonzaga's nose, broke it. Gonzaga couldn't breathe for the rest of the fight. But, that's just the luck of the game. That's if you slam someone and your heads collide, not really a lot you can do about it. The most famous slam knockout in MMA history, Quinton Jackson on Ricardo Arona, was basically a giant headbutt. We're all in a position where we're like, fine with that headbutt because don't get yourself picked up. It's that easy. So that was really unfortunate that Jerin Villel decided that was the time to flex his reffing powers. They took away Carlos Hernandez's knockout win and he got the technical decision because he was winning at that point on the cards. Very silly. But the fight was good, and I quite enjoyed Bondar's looks. Like the back kick he was looking for constantly. He did a really nice one where he got Hernandez to the fence, and Hernandez was circling off towards Bondar's right, so Bondar showed a double jab, a fake double jab, double shoulder feint. Hernandez starts circling. Bondar throws the right kick with the ball of the foot, round kick into the ribs. Beautiful stuff. But Hernandez really edged ahead with just like smarter striking. Bondar was trying to do tricky things, and Hernandez was like, doesn't matter, I'm just going to land basic shit. Anything else good? Kwang Ho Kang versus Cannonier was fun. Kang got banged in the head and was looked to be in trouble. Went back to the fence, chinned him, got on his back, choked him out. Not an awful lot of technical stuff to say about that fight, but definitely a fun one to watch. Costa versus Jimmy Flick was, another one where it's like, damn, forgot to check the calf kicks until it was too late. And checking calf kicks, I don't even say check calf kicks anymore. Or I don't like to say check calf kicks. Just pull your leg out of the way. Pull your fucking leg back. But Jimmy Flick's standing so wide and heavy on his lead leg that he's just a sucker for it. And Costa was landing them going backwards too. That's really bad. If you're going forwards and getting the calf kicked up with your weight on it, it's a very silly look. But it did mean that Costa could show the calf kick and step in with a big liver shot, which I loved. Liver shot right straight. The old Douglas D'Andrade special. I haven't watched Dalby versus Salikov yet. Both my boys do need to watch that. Pat Sabatini beat Lucas Almeida as he was expected to. Lovely trips along the fence. I was saying Pat Sabatini is a single-leg guy along the fence, but he does have good trips too. Got the arm triangle choke, got the win. Lovely stuff. And then co-main event was Arman Sarukian versus Joaquin Silva. Obviously, this was supposed to be Renato Moicano. I think it was supposed to be a headliner at one point. But Joaquin Silva, I was rewatching his fights in the week. He's another one where I've seen him fight before, and I couldn't remember who he was. And then I went back and I went, I remember this fight. Yeah, I like this guy. The one against Jesse Ronson where he hits him with the skip-up jumping knee 3 times. And he hit Jared Gordon with that once too. But there's a couple of things I really like about him that I would put out a Filthy Casuals guide on if I didn't know this would get 0 viewers. But if you watch his Ronson fight and the Gordon fight, Basically, just the 2 wins that he's got in the UFC. But he steps deep and throws an overhand real tight, so like a hook, with the elbow nicely bent at 90 degrees. So he steps real deep to land that. And then the next time he'll step deep, and as the opponent steps back, because they will, because it's MMA, and the only defense is to step straight backwards, and they keep their arm up ready to take the overhand, he just straightens out the punch, and it goes a bit further, but it goes inside their guard, and it hits them on the chin. Really nice shot. Also really good at keeping himself tight, getting up along the fence. Jesse Ronson was taking him down. He'd give up the back body lock, and he'd start standing up with one knee pressed to the fence. The Robert Whittaker special. Actually, Robert Whittaker, I think, uses the inside knee to stand up on. Silva was using the outside knee and keeping his elbow real tight and just trying to scrape Ronson off. And as soon as Ronson jumped the gun and tried to put a hook in prematurely, he stood up and shucked him off. It was really nice. But this one, man, I don't want to say levels to this because I hate people who do, but man, you saw Tsarukyan is a smooth operator in those positions because he got... Firstly, he took Silva down. Silva got the whizzer and tried to turn to his belly. And the whizzer is really... I mean, being able to stand up off the whizzer is so important because that's how Volkanovski got up from under Makhachev multiple times. Using the overhook, turning belly down, standing up. But to do that, you've got to get your feet out. You've got to get from belly up to belly down. So Tsarukyan kept a hold of the far leg and then sat through on his hip and pulled it up basically into his holster. And it meant that Silva couldn't stand up. It was really impressive, just the way he shelved that leg. And then he was beating him up along the fence on the ground. He was trying to throw the hook in as Silva was getting up, and Silva was not... He had one hook in, but he couldn't get Silva away from the fence. So he, instead of keeping the hook in on the same side, he stretched his hook across behind Silva's other leg and started fucking around with that. And Silva was going, what's going on here? And then eventually he used a broomstick to pull him down so that he was on Silva's back. And what I really liked about that was a broomstick is when you have a back body lock on someone and you put one hook in, and then instead of keeping the hook in, you stretch it across behind their other knee and sit down so that they have to come down with you. And there's a really nice video of Ben Askren demonstrating it. But I think Renzo Gracie did it in his last MMA fight when he was 50 years old against Yuki Kondo and won. But basically you sit down with the guy in your lap. You pull him down into back control with one hook. And what I really liked was that Tsarukyan sat down with him in his lap with back control and then immediately kicked under his hamstring with a butterfly sweep from the back to get up on top. Too much jumping on people's backs and not being able to do anything in MMA. And then he finished the round by actually throwing some strikes for the first time in the round. But the really interesting thing was, Tsarukyan, I often say he fights like a video game character because he's got this really dexterous lead leg kicking. And it means that he throws a lot of 1-2s into body kicks off the lead leg, and he does a lot of counter body kicking. If you watch his fight with Gamrot, because Gamrot's only ever going to throw 1-2s off both stances, he keeps slotting the body kick in underneath the punches, because when your elbows leave your body to punch, you're very vulnerable to getting kicked in the ribs. And there was a really lovely one in the third round. He did the Sean O'Malley special, the spinning back fist into round kick, but he did it really well. He didn't. O'Malley does a spinning back fist into a high kick off the same side. Or on the same side of the opponent, and that confuses some people. But Tsarukyan did a spinning back fist and then slotted the body kick into the liver. Really nice. But yes, he was doing the 1-2 step up round kick, and he was really stretching out his right hand for the 2. And then in the second round, second round, Silva just slips it and throws the counter left hook, comes back with the left hook and rocks Tsarukyan's whole shit up. Which was cool. That's what Silva does. He's not the best in the world. He's got some good technical skills, and he's got huge power. So Tsarukyan panic shot and actually succeeded on his panic shot. And then in the third round, he came out and took him down and just battered him with strikes. Got the TKO. So very impressive. I mean, sort of impressive. It's a last-minute replacement, and it was a last-minute replacement who was dangerous for far different reasons than Renato Moicano. You went from dealing with a very long, precise striker to a very stocky, explosive striker. A one-punch sort of knockout guy, which Moicano, probably not really that sort of striker most of the time. So Tsarukyan's asking for the Chandler fight because obviously the McGregor fight's never going through, as I've been saying for months. Since the moment they pretended they were going to do it, I was like, Michael Chandler desperately wants to make millions in an easy, winnable fight. And it's never going to happen. Conor's not going to make the fight. So Tsarukyan's like, Michael Chandler should fight me. It's like, well, you know why he doesn't want to. You're a harder fight and there's nothing to be gained from it. But Tsarukyan's absolutely desperate to make this fight happen. I mean, I do get it. Like these old-timey lightweights just sitting on their rankings and fighting the same rotation. Dustin, Justin, Chandler. Dustin, Justin, Chandler. When you've got these killers in the middle of the division like Ismagulov, Kutateladze, Sarukian, Dariush until recently. Well, Dariush still. I mean, like losing to Charles Oliveira does not mean that you're not better than Michael Chandler. Because Sergio Pettis is. Anything else on this card worth talking about? Christian Leroy Duncan's British wrestling. Oh, man. I was so excited for this guy after this. I really enjoyed like the first minute of his last fight. I went, oh, backing that one back. I was watching this and tugging my collar the entire time. Going, oh. But yeah, I think that's about it for interesting stuff from that card. If you didn't read it, I put out an article this week on Regien Ursel. One's striking Superman is what I called him because he's both the kickboxing and 4-ounce Muay Thai champion in his division. He's very fun. He knocks a lot of people out, knees people in the body tons, and has a very weird and interesting striking style that you should go and check out. The way he throws his right straight to step up into things. Very different to how you would throw right straight if you were just straight up boxing a guy. And that's up for the Patreon boys, so go and read that. Likewise, join the Patreon if you want to get in on the extra podcasts we do every week, the Boycast. And yeah, if you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing anytime, fightprimer.com. I am your boy, Jack Slack. We survived the old Romero 5-rounder, but Holly Holm versus Bueno Silva is still out there, and one day we're going to strike the vein. Bless.